Interesting. What is your specialist area of research in music?
I've moved actually over my lifetime in music, so my doctoral research looks largely at French music between the interwar period, between the First and Second World War. And the reason for that is I look at how music communicates something of a culture and interculturally as well. So my PhD, the composer's Jewish, working in a Catholic country interwar, writing on a pre-Islamic topic, Zoroastrianism, in a ballet that had Russian collaborators, and it was a melting pot of all these different cultures coming together to produce something new. That idea of collaboration has stayed with me. So my last book was about how we collaborate through performance and how that is so important to collaborate, to co-construct, to co-author. So you've not just got one name on a label. And my current work is taking that issue of collaboration and communication into talking about musical leadership. So the next book is about women's musical leadership, whether that's conducting, whether that's leading industry, whether that is historical figures and how we manage archives. So it's a lot about representation, about equality, inclusion, diversity, but it comes from communication, so how through music we can express something emotionally, culturally, politically, etc., etc.
I think it's brilliant as well because looking at the examination boards, it's brilliant that there are more female composers, and yes, I find that sort of thing very interesting.
There's more slowly but surely, but
yes.
There's not enough.
No.
There's not enough at all.
Certainly not.
Ever since Jessie McCabe wrote that letter to the Guardian complaining that there weren't enough women in the syllabus, there have been changes, but still, I mean, Jessie's now doing a PhD in this area, and it still needs a lot of work. You know, it's, as I was saying before when you were asking me about performing, there's still composers that are underrepresented. So Donna Women in Music is an organisation that helps with the representation of music. They're part of the Women's Musical Leadership Network. I'm co-leading at the minute actually, and they've done a report on the statistics of the amount of women represented across 100 orchestras last year. I mean, the percentage is abysmal, absolutely abysmal. It's far less than a quarter, but the percentage of Black and Asian women composers presented is less than 1%. It's outrageous. There are some orchestras actually still that are all male white composers,
yes.
and they're funded by people like Rolex and other large companies. So Donna's going to do some work on actually not targeting so much the orchestra and the programmers, but the funders.
Yes. I mean, you ever watched the New Year's Day performance? Yeah. And this, yes, we're always spotting where are the women in this.
if.
Which composers do you enjoy playing, and which composer would you like to research further, and why?
Okay, so playing, if it's solo performance on the trumpet, I quite like dabbling around some of Bernstein's short trumpet pieces. I also like doing some of the jazz work, so Wynton Marsalis's compositions. But for orchestral playing, I love those massive orchestrations where you're sitting on the stage and the stage vibrates with 120 people playing. So I love playing Halts the Planets, but I want to do more Shostakovich symphonies, Symphony 10 in particular. I want to do more Mahler symphonies, which may sound dull to anybody that doesn't know those composers, but from the performing experience, I love the performing experience. I actually love the performing experience of those more than listening to it.
Yeah.
But in terms of what composer I might want to research, I think now I'm more interested in how composers interact and what it says culturally. I'm more interested in not taking one individual, but taking the context. So I started to read more about Florence Price and Ruth Gibbs, English composer who actually used to work here at Kingston. So I've started to look more into them as part of the Women's Musical Leadership Project. But it's not just composers for me anymore, it's everybody in the music industries has a role to play in diversifying programming. So I'm really interested in looking at who does the programming, who's doing the marketing and all that as well. And giving them a voice that they've not had in the archival material, they've not had a platform, and making sure everybody does.
Brilliant. Yes. I would like to say thank you for being so supportive of my academic music education. As I mentioned earlier, Helen has been my tutor since 2015. Well, hasn't said this part, but has been my tutor since 2015, which is a long time ago now.
Trina's one of our many students who did the undergraduate degree here and
it.
then has come back for the postgraduate degree. And as many listeners may have seen before, I've done a few of these interviews in the past with students for podcasts and vlogs and what have you. So it's a pleasure to talk.
Thank you.
And to see what your questions are actually, because what you don't do with teaching, we don't necessarily talk about my experience. I'm talking about what you're learning all the time. So it's an interesting conversation for me as well.
And one of the things I've loved is getting to know you better